Hello, my name's Robert Adams. What I'd like to do is show you on this short tutorial video how to get the best out of your Trellis Trio dies. So we're going to look to see how we can produce cards like this. And I'm going to work with two machines, which are the Big Shot and the Grand Calibur, and explore some of the ways of getting the best out of the dies. And we'll look at some cards as well. But let's begin by showing you really the basic fundamentals to work with a card to get all of the parts working together. You can work with the thin metal dies on any of the machines. They're all geared up really to work with this, and it's just about getting your plating right. And you should know for your machine which one to use. Now, I've got the two sort of what I call market leaders here, the Sizzix and Big Shot, and we've got the Grand Calibur here. Now, they both do the same job. I've got to say, because you've got a bigger plate on this one, it probably makes life a little bit easier and gives you slightly more scope, but you can still make lovely cards with this machine. And here's one, as I said, to show you that I've done earlier on, and that's all done on this one. So we'll talk about different techniques and how to overcome them, but basically everything's the same. So because this is the more difficult machine to work with, because of the way that it cuts, I'm going to do everything on the Sizzix and then just very briefly reiterate what I've done here using the Grand Calibur and show you how you could work with that. So we'll start with this, and even though you've got either machine, I'm going to start right at the base. So forget the machines at the moment. The next thing to do is I'm going to show you how to lay out these dies properly on a piece of paper, so no matter what you're cutting with, you're going to get a beautiful card out of it. So no matter which machine you're cutting with, what we've got to do is lay out the dies. Now, the first thing I'm going to go for here is the approximation of a large one on an A5 piece of paper. So what I'm going to do here is initially just lay this out to get it looking how I think it should be. Now, the top die is the one that's probably the most difficult to sort out, and here's your handy hint. First of all, it cuts off, and it's the only one that physically cuts the edge and gives us that scalloped edge. Now, the trick here is to make sure it's at pretty well 90 degrees across, not like this or like that, because it means you'll get a bigger gap one side than obviously the other. Now, my handy hint for you is to use a ruler and a pencil and measure down 23 millimeters and put a little mark, and then just do the same this side. 21, 2, 3, and put a mark just a bit over there, and put a mark there. That's just to guide you. Now, you could, if you've got a cutting mat like this, use the grid and see as well. So effectively now, if I pop this down, I put it close to the top, and I'm lining that with these two end bits here, just so that I know that they're pretty well even across. And then, of course, you can decide how far over that you go, and what we want is a sort of equidistance each side. That now means I've lined that up. So the first thing to do, because it's going to be my first cut, is just to tape this down. Now, use tape that isn't too tacky. I'm just sticking this onto my clothing to pick up some fabric hairs and to make sure that it doesn't overly tack. Now, that said, this is going to be waste here anyway as we cut through it, so it's not so important, but with the other ones it is. Now, you can at this stage make your first cut like this, but before you do that anyway, I would just start to mark in the other ones that we've got. If I just come to the bottom one here, again, I'm just going to rest this down and just place it by eye. Now, we leave a space around there, and obviously a space at the sides. And if I'm happy with that, I could tape it down. And what I'm doing is just checking that this one's got a nice gap there. And of course, when I cut this one, I'll keep it at 90 degrees or parallel, running parallel with the paper there. And I've just moved that, which is why I should tape it down at this stage. I'm just checking there, but you know, everything looks good. So getting that top one right and just making sure that those two edges from here to here and there to there are on the same line, just makes the whole die work beautifully and easily. Now you can do this quite quickly. I'm explaining it and I don't want you to think, oh, it's going to take forever to make a card. It won't. Once you've done it, you'll be pretty good. So again, I can see the distance I've got between here. I can even come up on this one from the bottom a little bit if I want to. But the next thing to do is cut that, because what we're going to do is now just tape this down so that it doesn't move around. Because what we're going to try and do is cut these two at once. So again, a little bit of tape. Now this will stick to the paper. So again, don't want it too tacky, a low tack tape, cross the die, just hold it in position there. And again, same again on this side, like so. Just a final check that that should fit in there nicely, line up at the side, which it does. And we've got space this side as well, and that's the same size, which it is. Come in a little bit there. Fantastic. So I'm good. So I've measured everything and I've stuck these two down. Okay, let's talk about cutting machines, because in an ideal world, we want these machines to go through this way. Now you can do that with your Grand Calibur because it's a much bigger machine. That means I can actually pop this onto the plates and run it through there. So for you Grand Calibur people, pop it onto your plates, put it through the machine. So again, line everything up. At this stage again, I find the tape helps, just you know that's in position now. You'll pop that down, your top mat down, put that in, squeeze it in and run it through the machine. And when you've done that, you're ready to then pop this one on. Those will be cut out, cut that one, and this time do it this way, and then flip it over and do it that way. These two will have been removed. And that's how we do it on the Grand Calibur. But for the big shot, we are going to have to do things differently. So the most obvious thing is that we can no longer put it through like that on a full A5. It's got to go through this way. And of course, on our Grand Calibur, on our big shot here, we're going to flip that over. But just to show you how it works, that's going to have to go through like that. Now, these two, the side ones, will cut beautifully afterwards, but these are the difficult ones, because really we're asking a lot of the machine and the die to cut, but it will do it. Everything I've done on these machines. But one thing to say to you is that it might be necessary to shim these, and by that we just add an extra bit of card. What I would do is just cut it just a little bit beyond the length and put it underneath that side, and do the same again for the bottom there. So we'll just cut 2 bits of card. Okay, so with the dies on, the next thing to do is cut this. Now I'm going to turn it this way up on my machine and just make sure there's plenty of room all around the plate for it. It's not too close to one edge. Now I would then recommend putting, so it doesn't mark the face or the decorative side, popping the shims over here like so, and then we can put the plate on like that, and then just feed it through the machine and just help that on its way, hold the plate down. Because you've got the shim, it does make it quite tricky going through. So again, push that down there, come out, a bit of a clonk. Make sure everything's still in position nicely. And I think I'll probably feed it back through again, but I'm just going to run it back this way. And again, just check everything. You can see it starting to cut there. I can see it coming through my shims, so I know I've got a fairly good cut, but wouldn't do any harm just to run it through again. Feel it a little bit easier this time. And there we go, a bit of a ping as it comes out there. Right. and we'll see what that comes out like. So remove those and remove that. And now what I'll do is just tip this over. That can come away. You can see that that's on the top part, so that's cut away. And I'll need to just use my pokey tool on there. Again on the back here, just carefully lift that up, because that tape will try and take off some of the paper if it's too tacky. Now I perhaps rushed this, could have had slightly less tacky tape, but it's not done a bad job. But it again depends on the surface of your paper. But if I just carefully lift that away, just about get away with that. It's left a bit of the tack of the tape on actually. Okay, so that's, you can see our cutting lines here. That's not too bad. So what I'll do now is go ahead and just using my pokey tool, go on and just pop these out. So most of them will have come out, but you can see one or two just need a little bit of a hand to go through. And the other thing is sometimes it's easier to cut on the back. You see the less decorative side, i.e. there's definite front here because of the way that it bevels the edge, but pushing it this way is actually coming back the way that the cutting blade went. So if they're slightly trickier, you'll find that they'll pop out more easily because you're putting them back into the cut there as well. So I'll go on and just pop out the rest of these as well. Now I've gone on and taken all the bits out of here, but something I'd like to say that might make your life a little bit easier, especially on this. Now the Grand Calibur is by far and away the best machine to use with these big dies. You can do it on the Big Shot, but it is a little bit trickier with the shimming. But again, can be done. Now, one of the things, I ran this whole thing through, I put it all on the machine like this and just did it all in one pass, top and bottom. If you're finding it's difficult, I would suggest that you move and just tape the bottom one later on. Just do one at a time. So do the top one first. Instead of having it balanced towards the edge there, bring it down on the plate here. Bring it down a little bit further with the die. Pop that on there and just concentrate on that one cut. So we get a nice lead in on our machine there. Obviously I haven't got the die in. We get a nice lead in. You can feel it drop off the die as it comes off, and then you'll be able to go back. And even go back through again if you have to, and then come back. You may have to do that a couple of times. And then when you're happy with that, then stick the bottom one on. And again, we'll just turn it around, make that the leading one, pop it down, you know, leave a third of the plate there, just to give us a nice run into cutting it. And don't go too far, you don't want to go off the edge, or that'll crease that bit. And then again, we've got a nice lead in, it's gripping the plates nicely, and that will spread the pressure. And that will give you a much cleaner cut as well. If they're too close to the edge, and that first demo I gave you was just showing you how it would work going through, but the closer it just gives us a lot more of a run in it and helps spread the pressure and the load on cutting that. So I think that will give you a better cutting experience with the die. So having done that, we've done this one. The next thing to do is just pop in these ones here. Right, so to give you an idea, obviously this die, there's a slight lip to it, so we come back there, keep the distance between the metal and the cut beforehand, and just pop in a couple of bits of tape. In fact, it doesn't matter which side, because this is a non-cutting edge like that, i.e. it's not going to cut anything off, so it makes little difference whether it's there or there. And pop that back through the machine. Just a quick word, make sure everything's clear on here, there's no bits of tape or anything. And because it's going that way through, you don't need to shim it at all. So I can just pop that on, make sure that it's sitting within my plates there, and just make sure everything's within the area, because that's going to cut here. It's almost a third down. That will give us a nice run in. Don't have anything hanging over the top or bottom, because it can just give a little bit of a mark. And I'm just going to run that through now, like so. Much easier. You can see the die cutting my plate here. It's going in the direction that it wants to. And you'd probably find one cut is more than enough on that. You don't really need to go back through twice. That will just peel away, and you can see everything just coming off. A few taps on here. All the bits come out. And what doesn't, just use your pokey tool and just get rid of those last two there. Sometimes if you've had tape on here, it leaves a bit of residue on there. Clean everything down. You don't want these bits going anywhere. And again, just bear with me, I'll move that out of the way. A quick broad sweep here. Clean my work area. And flip it over. Remember that where the decorative edge is the way that we cut through, so we've got to keep everything facing the same way. Turn this round the other way here, like so, and just make sure that again is lined up. Same area as before. Got my bits of tape on there, and then back through the machine. Now before I do that, I'm going to stop because I'm going to show you something. Look, I've just caught the waste on there, so I'm going to pull that off, and I've just noticed a little bit in there. To be fair, a little bit in there isn't going to stop it cutting, especially on this one. So with everything clean and all the bits off, I can come back, just pop that one in, measure it along there, and I'm just doing this visually. Same measure, I'm just doing it by looking at it, and push the tape down just to hold it. So we want to keep that in position. Back to my machine, and the same applies. I'm popping that over there and just making sure it sits within the plate there. And top plate on. Line that up, and through we go. Remember, if you're using the grand caliber, we're doing exactly the same thing, except we're running it on the bigger plate. So you're going to have a little less problems with the cutting with that. And just remove this. You see that comes away. And there we go. That's our trellis cut out there. Now sometimes, depending on the paper, I find I get a little bit of a bow on it slightly. That, if you just press it, will come out. Or what you can do is just use your machine, and I just run it through the plates, make sure that there's nothing in it. It's a bit like ironing it flat. This had a coated surface, so that can do it, and just pop it down. Doesn't really matter which way, but do make sure everything's clear and clean. And I've just popped a little bit on there, so you do have to be scrupulous with this, because those little bits will catch it otherwise. And I can just run that through. Now it hasn't got the width of a die on it, so it's not going to overly do it, but just run that, and that can just help flatten it down a little bit. Again, you could shim that, put another bit of card on it, but the gentle pressure of the rollers just helps to give you a much more smooth. In fact, it depends what you're doing with the card. Just pick that up and see already that's now, by running it through the roller, has given me a much better edge and flattened everything down for me. So there we go. That's how to use or get the best out of it if you're going really large here. If you're making smaller cards or A5 ones, you could pop it through a different way. Let's just show you here. We could have the paper sitting here and even fold it in half and running through. But that is something to look at later. We're going to do the same thing again with the grand caliber. So just pop this on. I've measured my 23mm, so I can just line up that part there and pop it near the top. Put my tape down, and again, get my base plate here, pop this upside down like so, and run that through. I could do the bottom one as well. I could run them both through at once if you want to save a little bit of time, but I think it just gives you a nicer cut if it's only having to do one job at a time. So feed that into the machine, turn the handle, you'll start to feel it bite. through, and it kind of releases. You can feel it getting easier to turn. So again, nice and slowly, nice even cut then on there, push that through. Take that out of the machine and see what we have got. There we go, all the bits have cut out there. Just pull that away, and you can see now just a few little bits in there. Use my pokey tool and get those out. So I'll clean up, and what I'll do now is just put the next one down like so and pop that onto there. And then when I've cut that, all I'm going to do is pop that through the machine this way again, obviously nice and cleanly with all my bits off. And then last but not least, what we'll do is turn it round with these two bits on, and then cut it with those two in position like that, so it's running through the machine that way, and then you'll end up with a beautiful trellis card. I've just taken the last two out. One of them had just caught slightly, and again, just using a technique, you can just use your scalpel blade to cut slightly, and you'll notice the top, because this doesn't quite go to a full A5, 148, just use your craft knife, pair of scissors, and I'll cut that away. It doesn't need to be on the card. There we go, that's done there. So the next thing to do is just pop this on here. Again, line that up, a little bit of space at the side, and pop some tape on there. And I'll run that through the machine. Sideways onto the plate as last time, make sure that's all sitting in there. Give it a little bit of a run up, out with the machine, pop it in, and again, just let that cut through. You'll feel it ease off, come back nice and slowly. And again, carefully lift your tape up. Again, a low tack tape will work for you there. Clean that up. So the next thing to do is just do the same for the two sides. I'm just going to run that through on the machine now. And you can see all I'm going to do now is pop that onto there like so. Hold it into position with my tape. And this time we're running it through that away. So I'm going to turn the whole card round and put it close to the edge. It gets a much better cut. Come back about a centimetre or so, but you get a much better cut on the machine. Make sure everything's clear. That will cut into my base plate. So let's do it the right way. Flip it over, pop it onto there. And again, just run that through the machine. And we're going to repeat this exactly the same for the other side as well. You'll feel that going through. Don't go too fast, I'm racing away there, but I think you get a better cut if you go at a nice steady speed. There we go, let's cut through. And again, just get rid of all of the bits. Pull that away. There we go. Lovely. And as you can see now, that's the same. So I'm just going to repeat the process for that side. And we'll end up with, as I said, a lovely trellis card. And with the other one, last but not least, I'd pop it all down, give it a squash on the plate, so it just evens it all out, kind of smooths it down as well. And there we go. Those are the techniques that I would use to get the best out of these dies. What I'd like to do now is just show you some examples using the cards and just talk through some of the techniques. I hope this will give you an idea and sort of form an inspiration for you for ideas of your own working with the die. So let's take a look at this card here. So on this one, I've cut everything out and I've put it onto a coloured paper, onto a background. So that comes through and it just gives you, again, a lovely backdrop to work with the trellis and gives it some strength as well. Then just my embellishments on there. Now on this one, we used the top part and it worked brilliantly as a bridge. So you can use that to create a bridge effect there across a card. And I think that looks really nice. So it's again just a way of thinking slightly laterally with the die. On this one, same technique. We've popped it onto a background card there, onto a lighter colour, and that's the same for the stock. So it just opens there. And then what I do is just trace the edge around it to create the same top, front and back, and then just cut that using my scissors or craft knife along there, and that gives you again a lovely card like so. Now we can work smaller, and here's an example Dawn, one of my card makers, has done, and what she's done here is just used the dies in different combinations. So we've worked with what was initially the edge to form the flaps here, and then we've got this lovely pockets inside, just using the top parts to create pockets for us to put messages or wedding invitations and RSVPs in for you there. Now on this card, again, you can, although we did everything on one single piece of card, you can cut elements out and then stick them down. So and that's what I've done here, and just put images behind it so that we've got a piece of decorative top and bottom using our trellis dies there, like so. Now on this one, I've just used it for the top of the card, and it creates this beautiful card here just along the top of the A5. We've got a rather nice little fold at the back here, which is sort of a variation of a theme on the easel card. This is one of Barry's cards, and I think it's absolutely brilliant because the flap comes up, calls it for A5s, it can post, but just beautifully holds itself in like so. And with that lovely bit of trellis along the top, looks absolutely wonderful. Now, we can work smaller, and on this one I've used an A6 card and just put some basic embellishments on there and created a beautiful smaller card, and that's just running down the edge there. So again, I've just run it through my machine to create my card. Do it the right way up for you there, just running through like so and creating a lovely little card. A few embellishments on there, some ribbons, a little bit of pearls, and it looks lovely. Same again here, just using our smaller A6 cards, embellishing those, and this time I've used the bottom part at the top and a side bit on the bottom, and then just manually cut around those edges just to mimic the shape that was there to give me, again, a really lovely card like so. Lovely toppers. We've got all the words here. The congratulations, they can bend as well with our word dies. So the all occasion word dies, you can put a nice little twist on it if you want to. Again, a simple card here, using that for the topper, and it's almost like that bridge effect again, just working our way through to create a beautiful lattice pattern. And on this particular one, it's from our template with the flowers, we get this lovely pop-up flower as well. That's incidental, but that's the cover of the card there. And again, variation on a theme. This is quite nice because it shows you we can cut out elements of the die here and use that as a piece of embellishment on the work itself. So we cut it out perhaps on mirror board or on bronzed paper here, and then just cut around the edge so it creates its own topper. And back to our smaller cards again, you can have lots of fun. So I've used the bottom panel twice, once on the bottom, once on the top, and I've got this lovely effect of the card here. I really like this. So there's lots and lots of combinations. And last but not least, back to this one, and here we've just again cut it out of a single piece and put it on top of another piece of card, and then embellish the top. So we've got two colours coming through. I hope you found this short tutorial informative and given you the confidence to go on and use the dies. And by looking at some of the cards, perhaps serving suggestions for things that you could do working with them. Now, I think I've only touched the tip of the iceberg with this, and I'm sure many of you crafters out there are going to really get to grips with this and probably find many exciting new and wonderful techniques of your own. Either way, I hope you enjoy the dies, and don't forget there are other tutorials on the website for other dies in the range as well if you want some further information. Take care and enjoy your crafting.